The story of the trilogy consists basically of two streams of plot: the recreation and reestablishment of the Imperial Navy, and the growing threat of an evil, insane Dark Jedi. While our main characters of Luke, Han, and Leia have large parts to play in the story, the primary driving force of the trilogy is the villains. We are introduced to Grand Admiral Thrawn in the opening chapter of Heir to the Empire. This mysterious alien commander has returned to the Empire and installed new standards that have transformed it into a formidable fighting force. Despite his new tactics and standards, the Imperial Navy is still limited by its lack of resources, but Thrawn has a plan for that. He dispatches a small unit to steal data from Obroa Sky, which leads him to the Emperor's storehouse on Wayland. Before going to Wayland, Thrawn goes to Murker to acquire the Ysalamiri, a creature that projects a protective bubble that is devoid of the Force. Thrawn travels to Wayland where he and Captain Pelion investigate the Emperor's storehouse. They find an experimental cloaking device, tens of thousands of Sparty cloning cylinders, and a mad Jedi clone, Jorus C'baoth. He makes a deal with C'baoth, takes the cloaking shield, and starts using the Sparty cylinders on several cloning projects. We later learn that Thrawn is using the Ysalamiri to grow the clones in a force-free environment in order to avoid the insanity that is prevalent with clones. With personnel soon to no longer be an issue for the Empire, Thrawn sets his sights on acquiring a new fleet. His first attempt to acquire a fleet involved stealing mole miners from Lando's mining interests and using them to burrow into a fleet being constructed at Sluis Fan. A fortuitous set of circumstances brought Han, Lando, and Luke to Sluis Fan right before the attack was initiated, and Lando's knowledge of the control codes allows them to take control of the mole miners and use them to wreck the circuitry of the ships. Thrawn leaves having been thwarted, but still depriving the New Republic of its new fleet. From there, Thrawn learns about the possible location of the fabled Katana fleet, a fleet of 200 dreadnoughts that were slaved to the same circuitry and then lost to hyperspace. The New Republic learns of the fleet's location at roughly the same time, and a mad race has begun. Unfortunately for the New Republic, Thrawn was able to get to the fleet first and made off with 285 of the ships. Now, Thrawn has his fleet and a way to man it. He launches a full-scale assault across the New Republic Imperial border. With the Republic reeling, Thrawn engages the next step of his plan, cloaking a number of meteors and setting them in orbit around Coruscant, effectively cutting the planet off from the rest of the galaxy. In order to locate the meteors, the New Republic figures out it needs a special device that only the Empire has, one at Tangreen and the other at Belbringi. The New Republic feigns a planned attack against Tangreen, but actually moves against Belbringi. Unfortunately, Thrawn anticipated this move and is awaiting the New Republic with a large fleet. A massive battle ensues, with both sides relatively equal in force, but with Thrawn's military genius giving the Empire the advantage, until he is assassinated by his Nori bodyguard Ruck. With Thrawn dead, the Imperial fleet falls apart and retreats. Concurrently with this unfolding war, Jorus C'baoth, insane clone of an old Republic Jedi Master, is discovered by Thrawn guarding the Emperor's storehouse. In exchange for helping Thrawn's war effort, C'baoth is promised several young Jedi for the mad clone to mold into his own acolytes: Luke, Leia, and Leia's unborn twins. C'baoth makes contact with Luke and attracts him to Jomark, where Luke attempts to learn from the Jedi. Once it becomes obvious that the man is insane and can offer Luke nothing, he decides to leave along with the assistance of Mara Jade, assistant to smuggler Talon Karrde and former Emperor's Hand. Through repeated failures to capture the Jedi for him, C'baoth grows ever more crazy and unhinged. He eventually confronts Thrawn, claiming the Empire for himself. Thrawn is able to placate him, but he knows that his deal with the Jedi has a natural expiration date. C'baoth returns to Wayland, taking over the mind of the Imperial general assigned to the unit in transit with him, and awaits for Luke and Mara's arrival. They arrive, intent on destroying the cloning facility there, and confront C'baoth. C'baoth reveals a clone of his own, taken from Luke's hand that was cut off on Bespin. Luke and Mara fight against the clone, eventually killing it and the Mad Jedi. The plot of the trilogy is tight and consistent all the way through. There are several side stories and deviations that occur along the way, but they are all in service to these two major plot points. Everything naturally flows as we make our way through the trilogy, and there aren't many logical leaps or plot holes. It really is a well-crafted story fitting for a sequel trilogy. If George Lucas had never deigned to make an actual sequel trilogy of movies, this would have been a fine source to adapt. It's not without its problems, of course. The biggest problem is one we will discuss when going over the new characters, but a minor one is an issue we've spoken of in previous reviews: the Clone Wars. Just as the timing of the Clone Wars was a mystery when this book was written, so too were the details of the war. When the idea of the Clone Wars was mentioned in A New Hope, it was a throwaway line that existed just to world build. At the time, many assumed that the war was fought against the clones, with the Mandalorians involved in some way. It wasn't until much later that Lucas shifted the details around to make the clones the good guys in the war. The book was written under the previous assumptions. As soon as it is discovered that Thrawn is using clones, many across the story grow very fearful, remembering how vicious and frightening the clones were that the Republic fought against. Mara even mentions to Luke at one point that the only reason she is helping him is because she knows just how horrible clones are. Once again, this is not a problem directly with the story, but it is a continuity problem created after the fact. Still, it doesn't detract from a truly enjoyable read. First and foremost among the new characters in this trilogy is Grand Admiral Thrawn. We are given very little about his backstory, which only serves to increase the mystery surrounding him. All we are given concerning him is that he is a humanoid alien from a species called the Chiss, who was able to advance within the xenophobic empire to its highest military rank, the Grand Admiral. We are informed early on that he is an admirer of exotic art and uses wisdom gleaned from said art to craft strategies against his enemies. We are shown that he is a brilliant military commander who has transformed the Empire into a formidable fighting force. Thrawn's military genius and expert tactics are on full display throughout the trilogy. Early on in Heir to the Empire, he performs quick strike raids across neighboring systems designed to stretch the limited New Republic military assets in the region. Eventually, we see why. Stretching the fleet also required the New Republic to stretch its personnel, meaning that the ships that Sluis fanned would be running on a skeleton crew, making it easier to capture the ships with the mole miners. In Dark Force Rising, he is able to predict the location of the man who knows where the Katana fleet is located and arrives there early enough to capture the majority of the fleet. In The Last Command, Thrawn hatches a plan to neutralize Coruscant's impact on the war, while also realigning his forces to meet the New Republic at Belbringi instead of Tangreen. Many of the New Republic military leaders are openly wary of engaging against him, almost to the point of paralysis at times. Thrawn anticipates all his enemies' movements and strategies and has a quick, ready-made response and counterattack already planned. And herein lies the biggest problem with the trilogy. Thrawn is too good of an enemy. Allow me to explain. Thrawn's primary modus operandi is to study the art of different species and use the techniques and artistic choices to develop psychological profiles he can manipulate in battle. Since his tactics are based upon taking advantage of his enemy's psyches, his strategies are nearly unbeatable. He crafts brilliant formations and movements and anticipates his enemy's counter movements, taking measures to meet their attempts to fight him. Most of the battle scenes in the books lack a lot of tension and basically consist of opposing commanders remarking upon how ill-equipped they feel going against Thrawn, or Thrawn explaining to Pellaeon how there's no need to worry because he knows exactly what is going to happen. He details the events that are going to take place, and then events unfold exactly as he detailed. All the other characters spend the entire trilogy basically being outsmarted by Thrawn. The first book opens to Thrawn besting the Eloman commander's assault force with a small picket force, which served to establish how capable Thrawn is. He plans attacks to spread the New Republic fleet thinner, and the New Republic falls into his trap. When he attacks Mirkur, he just happens to notice a random asteroid and deduces that Karrde is hiding there. He is only thwarted in this instance by a supernatural warning through the Force. During the assault on the Chimera to rescue Karrde, Thrawn makes a rather large leap in logic to arrive at the conclusion that Mara Jade is using some kind of override code hardwired into every Imperial Star Destroyer. During the build-up to the final battle, he sets up a trap at Tangreen, and the New Republic moves its forces to appear that it will be triggering the trap. However, Thrawn anticipates the feint and deduces that the New Republic will in fact strike Belbringi, which is exactly what it does. It creates a sense of impossible odds, leaving us with no tension because we know inevitably the heroes will win. There are only 3 instances where Thrawn is either thwarted or taken by surprise. The first is in the Battle of Sluis Fan, where Thrawn uses stolen mole miners to drill into undermanned New Republic ships in order to steal them. It is only by coincidence that Thrawn arrives in system at the same time and is able to provide the codes that allow Han and Luke to take control of the mole miners. Even though Thrawn is defeated in the battle, it is still a partial victory for him because the New Republic is unable to use the ships. Thrawn's other big folly was in trusting the mad Jedi clone Jorus C'baoth. Early on, the Jedi's use to Thrawn is obvious, and Thrawn makes good use of him. But as his behavior grows more erratic and he grows more aggressive and demanding, Pellaeon attempts on numerous occasions to warn Thrawn of the danger. But Thrawn will not listen, thinking himself more capable and smarter than the Jedi. He took intelligent steps to counter C'baoth's powers, but they ultimately fail. If Thrawn had successfully defeated the New Republic at Belbringi, a prospect that seems almost guaranteed before his death. He would have had a difficult problem to deal with back on Wayland. The final surprise for Thrawn comes from his continued manipulation of the Nori. After Leia successfully demonstrates to the Nori that their planet has been poisoned by and was being continuously poisoned by the Empire, they announce to her that they will exact their justice at the proper time. That proper time would come during the climax of the Battle of Bilbringi. At the height of the battle, at the moment on which the entire conflict hinged, Thrawn's personal Nori bodyguard, Ruck, struck, driving his assassin's blade into Thrawn's chest. Thrawn was written as such a good villain, as such an overwhelming and unstoppable threat that it took the equivalent of a deus ex machina to defeat him. A formidable enemy is an absolute must when crafting a compelling story. Give us an enemy that's too weak, and there never seems to be any stakes to the story. Or you have an issue where the story really talks the villain up but never delivers. But Thrawn is the opposite of these things, and this presents an equally difficult proposition. Thrawn is a great and charismatic leader, but we never get the sense that he can fail. It's one of the trilogy's major flaws, but it still doesn't detract from the quality of the story. It's still worth reading, but one wonders how much better it could have been with a more fightable enemy. In addition to Thrawn, this trilogy introduced another character who would go on to take a starring role in the saga moving forward, Mara Jade. Mara Jade is introduced as the inverse to Thrawn. Heir to the Empire shows us Thrawn in the opening chapter, and we immediately see what he is about. He is calculating, efficient, and stringent. He is a capable alien commander that worked his way to the highest echelons in the anti-alien empire. Mara Jade is introduced as an up-and-coming member of Talon Karrde's smuggling operation. From Karrde's perspective, he knows little about the woman outside of her skills. He suspects that she has a dark past and notes that she seems to know things before they happen, but her past is a mystery. As the story unfolds, we learn more about her hatred for Luke Skywalker, though we aren't told why for some time. It is only when Luke is able to confront her about her dislike of him that he learns the truth. She is the Emperor's hand, a personal servant of Palpatine. During her training, the Emperor infiltrated her mind to the point that what she saw, he saw, and what he spoke to her, she could hear from anywhere in the galaxy. The final command he had given her before his death was to kill Luke Skywalker, and that command dominates her mind. Through the course of the trilogy, she is forced to put off that command due to needing Luke's help. She is finally able to satisfy it by killing Luke's clone. The story concludes with the prospect of Luke's training her and working closer with her. Mara is a great character and instantly became a fan favorite. She is strong, capable, and dependable. She carries a lot of emotional baggage that makes her rough around the edges, but she is fiercely loyal to those who earn it. Despite being driven by an unrelenting command compelling her to kill Luke, she is rational when dealing with him, recognizing that she needs his help. Mara is a great example for those seeking to write good female characters in an era where many struggle to do so. Mara is strong but vulnerable. She is capable but needs help at times. She is dependable but has her shortcomings. She is flawed, and that's what makes her interesting. Mara serves as a good counterpart for Luke, giving us a glimpse of a possible future for Luke if he had given in to Vader or the Emperor's offer to embrace the dark side. As the expanded universe continues on, Mara's role in the story will continue to grow until she becomes a prominent character in the lore. The Mad Jedi Jorus C'baoth is introduced in the trilogy. Little is known about C'baoth outside of what is directly presented to us. Luke finds evidence that the original C'baoth had been a successful Jedi that had worked closely with Senator Palpatine, giving us some indication that he might have been leaning more to the dark side than the average Jedi. Zahn's later work, a prequel called Outbound Flight, shows us that C'baoth did indeed push the boundaries of acceptable Jedi behavior. The clone Jorus is insane, which is a natural occurrence with the clones, though this is later retconned by Attack of the Clones. He views Jedi as superior beings who should rule the non-Force users with an iron will. He holds delusions of grandeur of creating the Jedi Order in his image, with Luke, Leia, and her twins as the initial conscripts. As his power grows across the trilogy, we can see just how dangerous he is when he hollows out General Covel's mind and replaces it with parts of himself. As long as he can maintain contact with Covel, he keeps the General alive. However, when the ship enters the East Salamary bubble at Mount Tantus, C'baoth's connection to Covel is severed, and the General eventually descends into depression and dies, his entire reason for living now gone. Once it becomes obvious that Luke will not join him, C'baoth has a clone of him commissioned. The clone shows us just what C'baoth wants in an apprentice. He is obedient and mindless. The final few characters we get will be long-standing fixtures in the expanded universe. The biggest one is Talon Karrde, the smuggler turned New Republic sympathizer. Karrde is a smart and capable commander who remains suspicious of any kind of authority. all useful hallmarks of successful smugglers. He recognizes Mara's latent force abilities, though he never suspects that is the source of her unusual knack for knowing things she has no business knowing, and moves to promote her through the ranks of his organization. He is the first of the smugglers to recognize the threat Thrawn poses to the galaxy, and marshals the complete smuggler's assets to oppose them. Despite all his apparent helpfulness, he still intends to get paid and always looks for ways to profit from any given situation. General Garm Beliblis is introduced as one of the founders of the rebellion along with Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. After seeing Mon Mothma gathering an inordinate amount of power and authority to herself, he left and began waging a private war against the Empire. The immense threat posed by Grand Admiral Thrawn brings these two rebellion heroes back together. Beliblis is a brilliant military commander on a level with Thrawn, but still, self-admittedly, below him. Throughout the trilogy, we get the sense that Beliblis is the only commander that Thrawn feels any threat from, including Admiral Ackbar, though for the majority of the trilogy, Ackbar has been sidelined by some of Thrawn's machinations, so that might be evidence that he does in fact respect the Mon Calamari. Our final new character is one that was overlooked for quite some time before becoming a much more important character later in the expanded universe, Captain Pellaeon. Pellaeon is a loyal Imperial officer who just wants someone to follow who can lead the Empire back to its glory days. Pellaeon was present at Endor and watched the Executor crash into the Death Star before his own captain was killed, forcing him to take over and retreat. Unlike many of the other Imperial characters we see throughout the early expanded universe, Pellaeon has no desire to rule the Empire. He knows Thrawn is the best chance for the Imperial ascendance and hitches his wagon to the Grand Admiral. Later, we will see him constantly searching for prospective leaders. He is professional and respects the chain of command to a fault. He serves as a companion for Thrawn throughout the trilogy, and while not as brilliant as he, does provide Thrawn with an interesting counterpart. This trilogy introduced several characters that would go on to be major actors in the decades of the EU's timeline, one being so popular he appeared in more properties after being killed off than he did prior to it. The Thrawn trilogy's impact on Star Wars is immeasurable. Not to rehash points I've made several times in the past, but suffice it to say that Heir to the Empire made Star Wars what it is today, or what it was prior to Disney's mishandling of the property. In universe, this trilogy features the first significant threat to the newly legitimized New Republic. Thrawn brings about a brief Imperial renaissance, reinvigorating the Imperial military, employing unusual and unexpected tactics, and throwing the New Republic off their game. Despite all his success, however, there was still a sizable portion of the Imperial remnant war machine that refused to heed his call, instead gathering in the deep core in response to a mysterious call. After seeing what's in store for the New Republic in the years after Thrawn's downfall, it makes one wonder what he could have accomplished if he had had the full Imperial fleet at his disposal. After his downfall and the subsequent Dark Empire revival, the Empire never really recovered. As the expanded universe continued on, the Empire is never able to mount any significant threat and becomes less and less of a player in the galaxy, with some books featuring villains completely unrelated to the Empire. Thrawn and the Dark Empire was really the last gasp of a dying empire. In the real world, the Thrawn trilogy set the standard for the expanded universe, and I wonder if it didn't set the bar too high. This is a solid trilogy with great characters and a really likable villain. From this point onward, all other EU authors were left chasing after Thrawn. Dala, Singe, and Isard were all attempts at creating villains as compelling as Grand Admiral Thrawn. I've already critiqued Thrawn as a character, and he definitely has flaws, but he is head and shoulders above the other villains created to follow after him. As a matter of fact, one of the next most compelling storylines prior to the New Jedi Order dealt with a possible return of Thrawn in the Hand of Thrawn duology. Sometimes an effort builds steam over time, improving little by little to a crescendo, and sometimes the best effort occurs right out of the gate. I think the early expanded universe was the latter. That's not to say that there aren't still compelling stories in the immediate years following the Thrawn trilogy, but there is a definite decline in quality that needs to be admitted. The Thrawn trilogy is an action-packed, fun adventure to dive into. After reading through it, it's easy to see why it had the impact on the franchise that it ended up having. It's not a perfect trilogy by any means, but it's easily among the best of the Star Wars books and introduced a character that is still being used today, despite a canon reset by Disney. If for some reason you've never read this trilogy, turn this video off, go get Heir to the Empire, and start reading it right now. If you have read it, where would you rank it among Star Wars properties? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching.